Welcome to Boutique Connects Update with me, Joanne Baynham. Today I'm joined by Currency Partners, and here to represent them is Lauren Walker, Sales Director, Currency Partners, and I'm also joined by Bradd Bendall, Head of Sales at BetterBond. Okay, Lauren, before we started, people are very familiar with Currency Partners. I think you've been on a number of times, but Bradd, you're new to this. Who on earth is BetterBond, and how does this work in the property market?
Yeah, good morning. So BetterBond is a bond origination company. We, for want of a better explanation, we broker home loans to the various banks to ensure that the consumer gets the best possible deal. We've been around for 25 years this year. We have approximately 450 staff around the country, and we service the whole of South Africa. So our primary customers are real estate agents, trying to ensure that their deals stay sold, and then obviously the consumer. We're consumer champions at our core. That's our primary objective, is to ensure that we save the consumer money.
Okay, and I can only assume you've done that, otherwise you wouldn't be in business for 25 years.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
Okay. Lauren, you work with attorneys and property specialists. What trends are we seeing in the property market today in South Africa?
It's interesting, I think, well, in our space in particular, obviously a lot of non-residents or foreigners coming to South Africa and buying properties here, and that's the bulk of what we see, obviously. We're helping facilitate that money into South Africa. It's really important to us, actually, that we give that client a really good experience of bringing money into South Africa. That trend every year is increasing, which is exciting to see. We actually monitor the flows in and out of South Africa in terms of what the Reserve Bank is seeing. For non-residents bringing money into South Africa for property specifically and capital flows, we've seen a steady increase every single year. We've been monitoring those flows ourselves for the last 10 years. And we've seen this year, as of the end of August, we're sitting at 21 billion rand that has come into the country for non-residents or foreigners. Last year, it topped at just under 30 billion, and we're forecasting it will beat that this year. So by the end of the calendar year, we should sit at about 32 billion.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
And is that mostly the Western Cape, or is it across the country?
For the foreigners, mainly Western Cape, Garden Route, Cape Town. We are seeing a steady increase in areas like Hoedspruit and Nelspruit. A lot of estates and developments are going up there, and I'm sure Bradd can speak to that too. What's interesting in those areas now is you can fly into Kruger directly. The weather's always great, and you're living near the bush. I mean, I'm not sure you could ask for anything better. And it's not super expensive either. So yeah, that's a trend we've seen. It's steadily increasing. So I think it's really important that we look after them, that if those funds are coming to South Africa, that we give them a good experience. Exchange control exists, so that can make it difficult. They're not used to that. There's no exchange control in their countries. So guiding them through that is very important.
Okay, so Bradd, back to you in dealing with clients across the wealth spectrum. What kind of trends are you seeing in the property market right now?
Well, firstly, we've been through a really, really tough period in the property market in South Africa. We've had very, very high interest rates for a long period, unprecedented, to be honest. And so, over the last year, we've seen the interest rate come up off from 11.75 down to 10.5. We still think we should be trading at around about 9.5. The Reserve Bank has shown their hand. MPC has held a very, very conservative line, reducing interest rates by 25 basis points at a time. That's put a lot of pressure on the property market per se, certainly affordability, and obviously interest rates have a knock-on effect throughout the economy. What we saw after COVID was a lot of decentralization. So to Lauren's point, these outlying areas in South Africa have exploded. So places like Hoedspruit, for example, Mpumalanga, Nelspruit, those areas have become quite attractive, primarily because of affordability, but also accessibility now has changed. So you have a lot more flights in and out of those areas where there was one a week or two a week. Now you get two a day, etc. So it allows people to access those areas relatively easily. And I think people have found, I think, sort of solace in living in other areas of South Africa as opposed to the main CBDs, the main sort of cities. So we've seen that decentralization happening. Obviously, there was a lot of semigration at one point from various areas in the country into the Western Cape. What we're seeing is the reverse semigration, not as extensive as people may think it is, but we're certainly seeing that. So there are quite a few interesting little trends going on. We obviously monitor all of that on a daily basis. Yeah, I think the property market for the most part is starting to recover from the sort of depressed state that it was in for a long time. And we're starting to see some normalization, which is fantastic. Numbers are up year on year. At the moment, we're up. So from a BetterBond perspective, we're up 28% year on year, granted off a low base, but an increase is good nevertheless. Yeah, I think we'll continue to see this decentralization taking place. I think people are finding value living elsewhere other than the CBDs. And I think companies are getting used to the fact that people can work remotely. I mean, one would think that post-COVID that would be a norm, but I think there was a reverse of the remote working. Big corporates called their people back in. And then I think slowly but surely we're sort of finding a balance between remote working and working in the office, which obviously allows people to work from home and in these remote areas, which is quite interesting.
You mentioned semigration is slightly reversing. What do you allude to that? What's the reason behind it, do you think?
Well, I think, the Western Cape is an expensive province to live in. Property prices are exorbitant, buoyed by the fact that there's this massive demand. But I think people, if I use an example of one of my friends, he had a 4-bedroom house in Bedford View in Gauteng with a swimming pool and a tennis court, and he moved down here, looked for a property down here in the southern suburbs and the Atlantic seaboard. It was impossible because the price that he sold for was equivalent to the deposit that he was putting down in the house here in the Western Cape. And so he ended up living in an area that was sort of subpar to what he was used to. And just the commuting was impossible for him. He found that the traffic in the Western Cape was worse than in Gauteng, believe it or not. And so his quality of life was compromised. And so he decided to go back. And I think a lot of people have realized that, albeit that the Western Cape is this wonderful province that is well governed and everything works, so to speak, your quality of life in Gauteng is not that bad. So,
well, the weather's certainly better than Cape Town.
Yeah.
Okay, let's get back to BetterBond and
Yes.
getting a home loan. What should they consider when applying for a home loan through you guys?
Well, I think that's the role the primary role that we play. You don't have to consider anything. You need to come to us, talk to us about what your aspirations are, the price bracket that you're looking at, and then we'll walk you through the process, literally. We have consultants belly to belly or online, whichever you choose to use, but they'll take you through the entire process, from a pre-approval, which gives you a license to go and purchase in a certain price bracket, to the full bond application, which we will structure and compile and get ready for the banks in the bank's language. And bear in mind, we submit your loan to 4 or 5 banks at a time, and each bank requires a different format. And so we'll ensure that is all taken care of. We'll talk you through the documentation. A home loan should be a really, really pleasant experience. Applying for a home loan should be a pleasant experience, but often it is not, because you have no idea what the banks need, and so it becomes a very daunting experience at the end of the day. And we're trying to avoid that.
Just out of interest, which banks are the easiest to deal with right now, and which are giving loans the easiest, out of interest?
Well, I mean, interestingly, if you had have asked me that question 5 years ago, or maybe pre-COVID, I would have given you a finite answer. But the truth of the matter is the banks all of them are very competitive at the moment, and that plays into the consumer's hands. It allows us to, as BetterBond, to go and take that home loan application and broker it and really negotiate the best possible deal for the consumer. So I wouldn't say that any specific bank is leading the way at the moment, and that's great for the consumer.
Yeah, that's great for the consumer.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go back to the consumer, Lauren, that doesn't need a bond. The lucky fish that can buy cash. Tell us more about this, and what kind of insights can you share with financial advisors out there to those clients paying cash?
Cash. Well, we see it, mostly for us in the foreign space. They genuinely don't need a home loan, and if they do, according to the Reserve Bank, and Bradd will confirm that, they can only have a 50% home loan or bond against their property. From a cash perspective, we know in South Africa, that process is that you pay your deposit into the attorney's account, and when the transfer goes through, you pay the balance. We have seen a lot of hesitance around that from the foreigners and non-residents because they're not used to that process. It's not the same as what they're used to in their own country, and they're not familiar with banks here. They don't know the names, so an Absa or Nedbank or Standard Bank, that's not a familiar brand for them. The attorney is obviously selected by the seller, so again, that's not a relationship that they're necessarily familiar with. So we are seeing quite a lot of questions around that, and also around whether they can get a guarantee. So could they put the cash in an account in their own name and have a guarantee issued for that transfer or purchase of property, obviously based on the terms for the transfer to go through. In that way, they keep the money in an account in their own name, they earn better interest on the funds. And then when the transfer goes through, the funds are guaranteed to be paid over to the attorney. So that's been an interesting dynamic we've seen playing out quite a lot. And it gives them a little bit more comfort on that transaction and just the parties involved.
Just out of interest, transfers. I think I heard something about Joburg being a nightmare with transfers. Is that true across the country, or is that just Joburg? Because to your point about guaranteeing, if your money's going to sit in a cash account earning a very low interest if you're a foreigner, you absolutely don't want to do that. But are transfers slower now, quicker? What's happening with the transfer story?
From what we've seen, it obviously took a huge hit in terms of turnarounds in COVID and took a while to come out of that. They don't seem to be out of the ordinary at the moment.
Okay, that's good.
I don't know, Bradd, if you've seen anything different to that. I think 3 to 4 months, roughly.
Which is standard, that's what it's pretty much always been.
3 months is pretty standard.
Okay.
We have this continuing challenge with the various deeds offices around the country, specifically Gauteng.
Yes.
But for the most part, it's 3 months is pretty much standard.
So it hasn't changed a lot.
No.
I kind of asked you about immigration just now, and you kind of answered it. But one of the things I've picked up from my clients is that Joburg property prices are starting to rise, and particularly on the lower end of the market, so properties under 4 million rand. Are you seeing that as a trend? They're saying people are being gazumped, and you've got to be quite quick now to buy property. That's something we haven't heard about for a long time.
Yeah, stock shortages is a real thing around the country. And I think, again, on the back of the high interest rate cycle that we've been through, that sort of stands is pretty you can explain why that has happened. But the lower end obviously is starting to move again because high interest rate cycles, affordability is affected. So your lower end of the market is the sector of the market that's most affected. And so, lower interest rates, your first-time home buyers come into play again. And so now there's a demand and there's stock shortages, so prices rise. So we have seen that. We've seen all our BetterBond indicators, which the metrics are first-time home buyers, the average bond of a first-time home buyer, average purchase price of a first-time home buyer. All of those metrics are up, and they're up by about 5% year on year. So to your point, or to your question, we're certainly seeing those prices increase.
Just out of interest, what is the average age for a home buyer in South Africa? First-time home buyer?
First-time home buyer is 36.
I think I read something yesterday in the US, it's 58. It's the first-time home buyer.
Really?
Because it's just an indication of how expensive the property market there is, that nobody can basically buy property. Now, it's an average, right? Yeah. So it's not the mean.
Yeah.
But it's just really interesting just how extreme the property market's got. So here it's fairly young still, actually.
Well,
or is that older than it's been?
Yeah, it's pushed out a lot over the last 10 years since the financial crisis. it pushed out from 32 to 36. And that doesn't sound like a lot, but if you work that on a percentage basis, it's a huge amount. And so,
how are people having families if the average age is 36 when you're moving into a house?
Yeah, really. I mean, well,
or buying a house, like
rent.
you're not renting, but I mean,
Rent,
just have your own home. It's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, but it speaks to the South African sort of mentality. You know, we don't have this saving mentality. So we buy fancy cars, and we live in areas that we aspire to live in but can't afford to buy in.
Okay.
And
right.
so that all pushes it out. But the cost of living in South Africa is challenging. So, you know, to save is a very
and I
big
don't see the
challenge.
SARB aggressively cutting rates, not when the new 3% target's just been achieved. Last question, Lauren. Foreigners, are they just buying in the top end? Is, you know, the sort of luxury item, like luxury market, or they're buying in the southern suburb as well? Is it kind of moving around? What are we seeing?
Not all luxury. Atlantic Seaboard is a target area for them, obviously, and you will see a higher concentration of foreigners in that area. But we see Simonstown, Wilderness in the Garden Route, Knysna, Plet obviously is a big area, but even Swellendam, I mean, the areas you don't necessarily expect, Langebaan, a huge amount of clients buying out there. And like we said, Nelspruit and Hoedspruit. So
are they just buying holiday homes, or or some of them actually moving here? I'm just trying to understand. Like, if you buy in Swellendam, it's quite niche.
Well, it's interesting because I think the dynamic has changed. So previously, in previous years, before COVID, etc., before people were working from home more, we saw that dynamic was more retirees coming, wine farms, golf every day, staying in an estate like in Ehrenvale, for example, and living their best lives, and maybe going home for summer and being here for 6 months. And I think they term them swallows. Now we've got this nomad visa that South Africa's offered. So we're seeing a much younger generation coming through. A lot of young families, they're of the opinion that we've got amazing private schools here for their kids. There's a great outdoor living, more free living in South Africa, an opportunity for their kids maybe to live near the bush and to learn from that. So I think that dynamic has changed a lot. And Home Affairs have helped through that, I think, by having this nomad visa too.
You're one of the few departments that actually works in this country. Yeah. It has hugely improved. I've been very impressed to watch it.
Yeah, yeah. So it's been great actually to see that trend. And then you see the higher supply around international schools, private schools going up in Swellendam and Plet, etc. So that's all changed.
Okay, so nomad visas make a big difference.
Yeah.
Bradd and Lauren, thank you so much. Is there anything else you want to add before we close off?
No, thank you.
No, thank you, Jane.
For your time.
Thank you.